Hello everybody, it's Mrs. Tremblay. It's time for lesson 1.1, integers and absolute value. So those might be two new words for you. Let's talk about what they mean. An integer, it's a positive or a negative whole number, including zero. So even though zero is not positive or negative, it's still an integer. So no fractions, no decimals, only positive or negative whole numbers. The absolute value of an integer is the distance between the number and zero on the number line. And the absolute value of an integer, if I want you to find it, it's usually written inside little brackets like this. So if I wanted to know the absolute value of n, this means the absolute value of n. So basically absolute value, it's a distance. It's how far something is away from zero. So our first task is to find the absolute value of a couple of numbers here. The first one I ask you to find the absolute value of is 2. Another way to ask this question, I could have written 2 inside the little brackets like that. So that means, what's the absolute value of 2, or how far away from 0 is 2? Well, here's 0 right here, and here's 2. To get from 0 to 2, we had to move 2 places, right? This is going to seem way too easy, but the absolute value of 2 is 2, because 2 is 2 away from 0. No joke. That's it. That's how you do it. Take a look at the next one. Now I want the absolute value of -3. Well, here's 0. Here's -3. To get from 0 to -3, it's 1, 2, 3 away. So the absolute value of -3, it's not -3. You wouldn't say something was -3 away from something, right? Like if one person lived a mile north from Jefferson Middle School and another person lived a mile south from Jefferson Middle School, they would both say they lived a mile away, right? No one would say, I live a -mile from something, because that just doesn't make any sense. So the absolute value of -3 is a +3, because distance can't be negative. How far away is -3 from 0? It's 1, 2, 3 away. So basically, absolute values are positive because distances are positive. So let's try a few without the number line. I have the absolute value of 7. So if you wanted to picture a number line, you could. How far away from 0 is 7? Well, to get from 0 to 7, I'd have to move 7 places. So the absolute value of 7 is 7. The absolute value of -1, if I was heading from 0 to -1, I'd have to move 1 to the left. It's still a +1 because distances are positive. The absolute value of -5, how far away from 0 is -5? It's 5 away. The absolute value of a +14, it's not a -14 because distances aren't negative. From 0 to 14, 14 is 14 away. These last two are a little bit different. This negative sign is not inside the brackets, so I'm not finding the absolute value of this. This means the opposite of the absolute value of 10. So first tell me, how far away from 0 is 10? It's 10 away, right? So the absolute value of 10 is 10. Now, what's the opposite of 10? -10. So I know I said absolute values can't be negative, but this negative is not inside the brackets with it. So you're finding the absolute value of what's inside. That's a +10. Opposite of 10, -10. Now take a look at this one. A little bit different. This time I want the absolute value of -10, and this negative sign out here means the opposite of that. Well, how far away is -10 from 0? It's 10 away. The opposite of 10 is -10. So basically, if you see this opposite of outside like that, if you're taking the opposite of an absolute value, it's always going to be negative because the absolute values are always positive. We'll elaborate more on that in class. I know it's a lot to take in. But so far, I'm hoping you're understanding absolute value is simply how far away a number is from 0. They should be positive. Okay, so why you're doing this is so that you're able to compare different values. And number lines are very, very useful. We'll be using number lines kind of a lot this unit. We'll also get to use little algebra blocks you'll see in the next section. Not today, I'm sorry, but next time you will. So comparing values. A number line can be used to compare and order integers. And all you need to remember basically on the number line is that the numbers farthest to the left are less than the numbers to the right. So numbers farthest left are less than the numbers to the right. And the counter of that is numbers to the right are greater than the numbers to the left. So I ask you to complete each one of these statements using less than, greater than, or equal to. And you might be thinking, we learned this a long, long time ago. I'm guessing you didn't learn it with problems that look like this, though, where you have these absolute value signs in here. So we're going to use a number line and the fact that the numbers to the left are less to help us out with each one of these. The thing I remember about which symbol to use, greater than or less than, I'm sure you learned it this way too back in the day, but the crocodile always wants to eat whatever is worth more. So the sign is going to open up to whatever is more, whatever side it's on. So if the greater number's on this side, you'd use it that way. If the greater number's on this side, you'd use it this way. Hello, how are you? Sorry. I wish I had my little eyeball things to put on my hands right now. There was this creepy show called Ubi back in the day that my kids used to watch with talking hands. All I learned was talk to the hand. But anyhow, let's move on. Okay, so I have 1, and I have the absolute value of -4, and I want to know, is 1 greater than, less than, or equal to the absolute value of -4? The first thing you need to know is what's the absolute value of -4? How far away is -4 from 0? And the negative's with the 4 inside. So -4 is 4 away. So all I'm really comparing is 1 and 4. And if you look at a number line, here's 1, here's 4. These are the two values I'm comparing. 1 is farther left than 4, as you learned way back in the day. That means that 1 is less than 4. So I want this to open up to the one that has a greater value. And this greater value is pointing at the one saying, ha ha, I'm greater than you. That's another way to remember it. All right, take a look at the next one. I have the absolute value of -2 compared to -1. First, figure out what is the absolute value of -2. It's not the same as -2. -2 is 2 away from 0. So the absolute value of -2 is 2. The two values I'm really comparing are 2 and -1. Here's 2. I'll use a different color this time. And here's -1. When you're looking at these orange dots, -1 is farther left than 2. That means that the -1 is less. So it's going to open up to the 2 and point at the -1, saying, ha ha, I am greater than you. So it wants to eat the absolute value of -2 because that's worth more than that. All right, next, I'll use a different color again. Let's try green. I have -7 compared to the absolute value of 6. How far away from 0 is 6? 6. So I'm comparing -7 with a +6. -7 is way farther to the left than the 6 is. So that means that because -7 is farther left, it is less. So it's going to be pointing at the -7, opening up to the absolute value of 6, because this is worth more and it wants to eat the one that's worth more. Give it some little teeth. It wants to eat that one. All right, last but not least, I have 9 compared to the absolute value of -9. Well, first figure out what's the absolute value of -9. Yep, it's 9. -9 is 9 away from 0. So if we put 9 on the number line and we put 9 on the number line, we see that one's not greater or less than the other. Those are exactly the same. So I would put an equal sign between the two. So if you're trying to figure out greater than, less than, make sure you remove those absolute value symbols first to figure out what the actual value is, because that's what we're comparing. We're comparing the values. And if you need a number line, feel free, draw one out. You can use this one, refer back to your notes to be helpful. The farther left, the less the value. All right, so now kind of building off of that, I want you to be able to order some values here. And in ordering values, you're going to have several values, and I just want you to be able to place them from the least to the greatest. I want you to be able to order those. And number lines are going to be very, very helpful to you in this as well. Some people can just look at it and you just know, and that's great, but the majority, we need a little visual tool. We're all visual learners. Maybe you did a little learning study and learned that, or if not, we could probably do something like that in class. Remind me. Okay, so I give you a number set here and I ask you to order them from least to greatest. When we were trying to figure out greater than or less than, and just a minute ago, we had to figure out the absolute values first, right? Well, same thing here. If I give you a number set here and you see there are some absolute value signs, I'm going to want you to find the actual value of it. So the absolute value of 2 is 2. This -3 is going to stay the same. It doesn't have brackets around it. Then we have the absolute value of -5. Well, -5 is 5 away. -1 has no brackets, and 6 has no brackets. So these are the actual values that I'm dealing with, right? Now we said that the farther the left a number is, the lower the value, right? So if we can pop these numbers on a number line, we can just start at the left and move to the right, and we'll have them all in order. So I didn't give you a number line because I want you to be able to have a tool to create your own. So in looking at these values, if I wanted to place them on a number line to help me to order them, I'm going to need to know how big to make my number line. That means I need to know the lowest value and the highest value. So I just drew a little number line here. If you want to use a ruler, go ahead, but we're not using this as part of our answer. We're using this to get to the answer. So I'm okay if it's not perfect. In looking at this on a number line, which one of those would be farthest to the left? And if you needed to flip back and look at that other number line, you could do that. I'm hoping you're seeing that -3 would be farthest to the left, so I'm going to write a -3 right there. Now, all the way to the right, the farthest to the right, the greatest value, would be this 6, right? So I know on my number line, I need to go from -3 to 6, right? So I'd have a -2, a -1, a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there's my number line. All right, so we need to place all these values on here. So if I was going to place the absolute value of 2 on here, it's worth 2, so it would be right here. So I'm going to write it right above it, the way it was originally. Then I have a -3. We have the absolute value of -5, which is 5, so that's over here. We have a -1, and we have a +6. We just placed all those values on the number line, right? What's beautiful about this right now is that I have my answer right here. Lowest to highest means I'm going from the left to the right. So my answer would be -3, -1, the absolute value of 2, the absolute value of -5, and 6. So that number line will make it really, really easy for you. I know it's kind of a pain in the arm to have to write it all out, but it makes it a lot simpler in the long run. All right, so take a look at the next one. Again, I want to order these from least to greatest. So let's first get rid of these absolute value symbols. I have 4. The absolute value of 7 is 7. This -1 doesn't change. The absolute value of -3 is 3 because it's 3 away from 0. And then I have a -4 here. So there we go. Let's make a number line. This time I'm going to draw it down here and make a little more space for myself. And looking at these values, on a number line, the lowest value, the one I need to start at, I see I have some negatives here. -4 is going to be farthest to the left. And I see that the highest I have to go in the positives, the greatest positive digit is 7. So let's make that 1, 2, 3. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. Now we're just going to place them on our number line, and then we'll end up with our answer. So the absolute value of 7 is 7. I'm going to place that one on here first. Our next one, -1. Our next one is the absolute value of -3, which is 3. And our last one, the absolute value of -4. I'm sorry, not the absolute value, just a regular -4. And, oops, I forgot about this 4 at the beginning. That's okay. Let's go put the 4 in here. Okay, now if you look at your number line, that's our answer. I have -4, -1, the absolute value of -3, 4, and the absolute value of 7. So number lines can be very friendly. Let the number line be your friend. All right, last but not least, we have a lovely little math story. Some people call them story problems, but you have enough problems, I'm sure, so it's a math story. The freezing point is the temperature at which a liquid becomes a solid. It's exciting. Which substance has the lowest freezing point? And is the freezing point of mercury or butter closer to the freezing point of water, which is 0 degrees Celsius? So this is a two-part problem. The first thing we have to answer is which substance has the lowest freezing point. So which one of these would be farthest to the left on a number line? And is the freezing point of mercury or butter closer to the freezing point of water? All right, so part one, which substance has the lowest freezing point? Well, you just need to kind of picture these values on a number line, right? And in looking at this, because I'm asking you which has the lowest, it means which would be farthest to the left on a number line. Right now I know the positives aren't going to be included on this because any negative value is going to be farther left, right? I mean correct, not left, right. That's confusing, especially when you're driving. Do I turn left? Yeah, that's right. Wait, no, left? I just had this conversation the other day. It's fresh in my mind. Okay, so the negative values I'm dealing with here, negative 53 degrees Celsius, negative 3 degrees Celsius, or negative 39 degrees Celsius. In looking at your number lines, I'm sure that you've seen the pattern that as I'm moving away from 0, the digit gets higher as I'm moving left. And as I'm moving to the right, the digits get higher. So this is kind of like the middle point. So what we could say is the higher the negative digit, the lower the value, the farther away from 0 it is, right? So in looking at these values that I have here, the negative 3 would be 3 away from 0 to the left. The next one I would hit would be the negative 39. The last one I would hit would be negative 53. So that means that the substance with the lowest freezing point would be airplane fuel. Lowest freezing point. So that one is the lowest freezing point because it's the farthest to the left. Now the next question isn't really asking you greater than less than. It's asking you which one's farther away, or which one's closer, to 0 degrees Celsius. So basically what we have here is the freezing point of mercury or butter closer to water? Let's say that this is water. Okay? Now mercury is negative 39. Butter, every time I say butter, I think it's like butter. If you don't know that clip, ask your parents. They probably will and they'll laugh. So for butter, it's 35. So this is kind of like an absolute value question here because I'm asking you which one is closer to water. Well, this one, the negative 39, is 39 away, right? And this one's only 35 away. So 35 is closer, and 35 goes along with the butter. So we're going to say butter is closer to water. Although in real life I highly doubt that butter is similar to water, but its freezing point is closer. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.